All right. Hi, folks. So today I'll very quickly take you on a whirlwind tour of Govbase. So Govbase, really short history, got started really at the beginning of Metagov when we were trying to do some sense making around governance. So we just built a bunch of lists. In fact, Govbase was originally called GovList. But this eventually, for lots of reasons that I'll share later, turned it into a larger database with all sorts of different data sets. And now I'm going to take you through it. So the main website is just go to govbase.metagov.org, and then it'll have an overview of all the existing data sets. So key thing about Govbase is that it's really, as it says here, a warehouse of existing data sets. And most of these data sets are research data sets. So if you're a researcher that wants to take a look at some existing research data sets, they might involve sort of digital constitutions. They might involve like n equals 3,000 surveys of primary data on political and economic engagement with crypto. They might be sort of more technical data sets around contracts. So these are analysis of DAO governance contracts. A lot of that stuff is inside Govbase, and it's contributed by several different members of the extended Metagov family. Govbase also, though, and part of the, I'll go through this a little bit now, is it's also composed of what I think of as like four primary tables that serve as the basis or the base, the foundation for all these other data sets, or at least it's a way of connecting all of them together. There are the projects table, the organizations table, the structures table, and the social ontologies table. And I will do a really quick run through, and we'll go to actually go to Govbase now and see what it looks like. So to go to Govbase, all the data is wide public on Airtable. All you have to do is click this link, which will hopefully improve, but you click this, it'll take you to all the records in Govbase. So you can click on that now and explore to your heart's content. If you haven't used Airtable before, just one really quick thing. We've actually done quite a lot of work to annotate the data sets. So you can click, or don't click, just hover over these little information symbols, and it'll tell you what is actually in each table and what's going on, as well as sometimes the maintainer of that table. You can also see different views on each table that kind of tell you about, oh, these people need maintenance, various things. So I'll tell you now, I'll go through the four, let's say, main tables in Govbase. First, there's projects. And to be clear, what this really means is software projects in governance, broadly speaking. So some of these software projects are intended for online communities. So things like, Unlock Protocol, One Hive Gardens, Aave and Aragon. These are things kind of intended specifically to help online communities govern themselves, or oftentimes as frameworks for creating new kinds of online communities. Others are really intended for offline communities, typically governments or civic bodies. So things like Consul and Decidim are really intended for cities. Polis is intended for, well, actually it's intended for lots of different things, but commonly used in sort of citizen assemblies. Participedia is a kind of data set exploring kind of civic participation. SESMAT is, anyways, there's a lot of these different things going on. Some of the software projects are not specific. They can be used for both online and offline communities. And a lot of software projects are not in Govbase, are not actually community related at all. They're not intended for communities or for governance per se, but they are, somehow still foundational in how communities work. So we include them here. The organizations table. So these are the actual communities or organizations, roughly, sorted by what kind of structure they are. The really quick sort of rationale behind organizations is obviously we're not going to compile a complete list of all organizations. However, this is just a good way of representing a range of different things that show up in our data set, a range of different examples. So, organizations use projects. They have certain structures, and I'll talk about what structures are. And obviously, they show up as the actual data in a lot of different data sets. Structures. these are what we think of as governance structures or institutional patterns, but in reality, this is just a giant list of labels that get used in different data sets to kind of just say, hey, this is like a democracy, or there's some sort of like, game theory being used, or this thing is a code of conduct versus a manifesto versus some other kind of document. Broadly speaking, structures are organized by ontology. I'll talk about a little bit close what that means. It's also organized by is subclass of. So career wealth is a subclass of measures of wealth. Whether it's a component of something, so whether career wealth is an input into a given, I guess, I'm not sure what individuality here means, but code of law is an input to what we think of as like architecture. It is a property of, so a community's revenue is a property of that online community. So these are the basic ways of organizing that we've developed for organizing all these labels. This is intended to allow some basic exploration and review of what is actually going on across different data sets. Finally, social ontologies. There are a lot of labels, as you can tell here, and this is really hard to navigate. So instead of trying to, well, we build obviously some structure to help you navigate that. But the key sort of way to do that is using what we notice this field belongs to ontology. So this is a link to the social ontologies table. And really, this is just we've compiled a range of different existing sort of social ontologies or social theories, basically words that people use to describe and classify and think about communities and governance. So these things from Lessig's pathetic dot theory around norms, laws, markets, architecture, and code, to more mathematical theories like game theory and the theory of open games, to other projects, other data sets, large data sets like the Constitute project, which is a data set of all the constitutions, national constitutions around the world. So there's a range of these things, some of these which we've built ourselves, some of these we derive from study of other papers. And it's a good way of like, if you're interested in contributing a data set and putting a data set into Govbase, oftentimes you're gonna have some labels in whatever column, and it's a good idea to put those labels into social ontologies, which lets you sort of map out where you are relative to where other social theories and social ontologies are. So often I find a pretty good exercise. Yeah, I think that's a really quick run through Govbase's current structure. There's quite
Can
a
you
lot.
review the sort of operating processes? So like how does one become a contributor, and sort of how is the sort of supervision of contributors? Basically, this is the substance of the object, and I'd love it if you could give us a quick run through on sort of how one goes about kind of becoming a contributor and how contributions are regulated.
Yeah, of course. So we do have a few open forms in the Airtable. And if you can get involved by contributing data directly to Govbase via these forms by submitting a new project, a new organization, or a new governance document. This is a little bit more specialized, so maybe don't start here. Honestly, the best way though is just join the Metagov Slack and join the hashtag Govbase-labs channel. And this is where a group of us, including the folks in this chat, in this call, are gathered, where we talk about data sets for Govbase or data sets for online governance, when we collaborate on different research projects that often involve some form of data, either collecting it or using it or analyzing it. And yeah, that's probably the best way. So you can see more docs in obviously you can go to the Airtable, just download all the data that's just openly accessible. You can also go to our GitHub, and that will have even more information. Where do I actually access?
Yeah, I'd just add though that the contributions are currently from a relatively small group of largely trusted contributors, and so the current state of affairs is that there's only really the instance of Govbase itself. We had discussed really early on when we wrote the announcement article, excuse me, doing something where there was sort of like a production version, which was the public one, and a sort of development version, which was the sort of one that was in the works and needed to, we could add stuff, but then had to kind of moderate the content. We never really went that route because we also had just like a sufficiently small group of contributors that it wasn't necessary for data quality. But I just want to kind of throw in there that if and when we scale up the contribution patterns, that will come with the additional requirement that we kind of expand our infrastructure in a way that allows us to take inputs in a relatively permissionless way, while also having a kind of operational vetting process that ensures that we don't push low quality content into our sort of public facing research database.
Absolutely. And I think a good way of thinking about this is currently Govbase is really, intended for researchers, oftentimes either looking for a research data set, interest in governance, or they have a research data set. The way Govbase evolved was actually very organic. People in Metagov and kind of the surrounding sort of family of researchers were just building data. I think like instances, for example, was contributed by Ellie Rennie's group in, the cases data set at RMIT. The CryptoGov surveys, this was actually sourced from Kim Auerbach and his team, to which I contributed at University of Pennsylvania. Basically, it just makes sense to organize certain kinds of data sets in Govbase or on top of Govbase because you have access to this already extant data sets vis-a-vis projects and organizations and structures. It's much more live. And if you were going to use Airtable, it's kind of like just a, just kind of an obvious decision, but it kind of makes sense just like put it on here because it's makes your job a lot easier.
We've done a pretty good job collecting and incorporating data sets from Metagov community members and just like broadly. I mean, I think Barada's DAOs in the Wild data set got incorporated into here at one point, which was really great. I think one of the challenges is actually freshness. So kind of thinking and talking about attributes of data in terms of usefulness. One thing we've not really figured out how to deal with is change over time. So that everything is instantaneous snapshot and not everything is up to date. And so we never really came up with a strategy for saying this was the state of affairs as of this point, and then created either processes for updating things, or better yet, processes for preserving the fact that it was in this state at this point and in this new state in the future. Given a lot of the organizations and projects have been in this database for many years, many of them have gone through non-trivial life cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's maybe the key thing here is that projects, organization structures, and social ontologies are supposed to be relatively, well, certainly structures and social ontologies, these change very slowly. But every other data set is usually, marked at a moment in time. And maybe that we should probably clarify exactly what moment of time that is as part of the metadata for those tables. Anyways, so I don't want to go too long, lest this recording go too long and scare people off. But if you have any questions and want to just check this out, feel free to email me. I'm josh@metagov.org, metagov.org. And the group of us here hang out in the #Govbase Labs Slack channel and have a regular meeting every week. So just reach out and love to have you join the conversation.